Hello and welcome. Today I'm here with Lhok from Shines and Luckydos, and today we're going to be looking at the Battle of Dazar'alor, looking into the lore and speculating about the raid in general. How are you today, Lhok?
I'm very well. How are you?
I'm good. So today, do you want to start with the first boss and just work our way through the raid as we go along, finding and picking out the things we found interesting?
Sure. Which side are we going to go with? Are we going to go with Horde or are we going to go with Alliance?
Want to go with Alliance first, and well, I mean, it's not that much of a difference. Just want to go with the Alliance side.
Sure, we can do that.
Okay, so first up on our list is the Champions of the Light in regards to raid bosses and where a lot of the lore starts. I mean, we could start the cinematic, but I think everyone has enjoyed the lore surrounding gnomes finally being put in a cinematic, and so we'll get to the stuff that isn't as well known. So, did you find anything interesting about the Champions of the Light?
Well, for the Alliance, it starts with the Prelates of Rezan. So it's always interesting when Rezan is on the table, considering up till now, like, Rezan is actually dead. So it's interesting that they've started with Prelates, and that during the encounter you have the certain moves and whatnot of the bosses still referring back to Rezan.
It makes you wonder if, instead of Rezan being first makes me wonder if he's actually gone for good. The other thing it makes me wonder is if he's more a concept than a, physical being. It's kind of hard to describe in general, but kind of would explain why the prelates still use the abilities of Rezan. Or do you think maybe it's more in relation to Rezan's ideology, or Rezan's aspect, the aspect of kings, I guess?
Well, I think it's more got to do with the fact that Rezan was very I think he'd be as close to as a holy lower as we're probably ever going to see. So they're probably just using whatever holy light, or as whatever that it is that's close to, as the remnants of that power, because there are certain things within the WoW universe that sort of have little sparks of light they can use. So it's probably that, but I still think it's very interesting that they still call upon Rezan, and that they're called the Prelates of Rezan. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Would you say he's the only light lower, or do you consider the other Celestials and the Lhok gods something different? And I'm referring to Chi-Ji and Hope in general, specifically when asking this question.
Yeah, I do consider the lowers to be a little bit different to the wild gods. So I guess saying that, I guess I would say that in my own interpretation of it, that on that branch, if you will, of religion, or a figure worship, that Razan would probably be the only light lower, or close to light lower, that they've got.
Okay. Well, I guess I'd ask, because I'm going to ask this because I found this interesting. What do you think about the achievement and the relation to Jani in regards to the Champions of the Light?
I actually haven't looked into the achievement, so you're going to have to tell me what it is.
So, from what I can tell, what you basically have to do is you have to click a trash pile that's next to one of your Champions of the Light, respectively to the Horde of the Alliance. And basically, periodically throughout the encounter, you'll get turned into a sword. And it's basically a red buff polymorph. And what you basically have to do is loot items, basically, shinies, from Champions of the Light's ads, so the ad spawns, and basically, defeat the boss, basically. Doesn't seem to be able to do it by yourself, but overall it's the intriguing thing I find, is the fact that Jani is specifically related to these, shinies, or more precisely the light itself, in regards that he seems to take from it. The reason why I find that interesting is, if we look at Jani, Gonk, and Rezan, they're all technically part of the same family. And if we go on the general idea that there's always some type of balance in regards to World of Warcraft universe, then technically you'd have Razan, which represents the light, Gonk, which would assumedly sit in the middle, and then at the bottom of it you would have Jani, which would in some respects represent the void.
Yeah, I could see that.
What I'm basically getting at, right, is that with Jani's like titles, like what is it, Lore of Secrets, which is a surprisingly interesting title, as well as Lore of Minions and Lore of Thieves. It's interesting that his, well, traits kind of represent, in a very low-level aspect, how the void interacts with the light in general, as in the void is always taking from the light, and the light is always, you know, just being in general. It kind of works as an interesting dynamic where the swords are technically scavengers, whereas you have Razan and the Devil Swords, which are at the top of the food chain in general.
Yeah, that would be definitely something that I could see, especially since the swords do like stealing everything and whatnot.
That's, I guess, the question is, do you think Jani will play a bigger part later on? Because personally think
Absolutely.
That... Yeah?
Absolutely. Just with how he's set up, I wouldn't be surprised if he plays like a much bigger role, even if it is like from the shadows and you have to sort of piece it all together. But yes, I definitely do think that he'll have a much larger part before this is all.
Yeah, I would agree with that. What aspects kind of gave it away for you that he might be, well, having a bigger part, or is it just, you know, the way we've seen him and the interactions we've had with him in general?
I think it is just how he was written. At first, like when you meet him, of course, like you don't really like sort of put it together. But if you like go and do all of his quests back to back, it's like, oh, okay. So like the first time I met him, he was like biting the butt, or getting you to go and bite the butt of a guard because the guard kept killing his swords, and you're like, okay, well that's fair enough, I guess. And then you're stealing hats, and you're stealing like you're putting coins on the road to like attract people, and then, you know, like they fall off like the road with the skulls and all sorts of crazy stuff that he's going and getting you to do. And the stink bomb in the shoes of Nessingwary.
Yeah.
Like just all those sorts of things. Like I think he, like, it was meant to be fun, yes, but I do think that he has a bigger role to play. His shrine, so the Tales of the Lower tablets, that is a extra achievement outside of the raid. This is going outside of the raid, but it actually appears in a broken ruin where the gorillas are. So where Grong comes from. And I always found it very interesting that would be the case, that we have this, like, this is going to the second boss, but we have this big gorilla. So this is going to the second boss for Horde, and I think it's the third boss for the Alliance.
Yep, third boss for Alliance.
Yeah, that I found it interesting after you mentioned that was the achievement for the first boss, that we would go, like, for the Horde at the very least, that they'd be going straight into the second boss, which is Grong, which has the connection with Johnny through the tablet and where it was found, which is the area with the Kajamite and the gorillas.
I will admit, in regards to that location of the tablet, I don't think that's respective of where Johnny's temple was, or currently is. And the reason why is because in it's a starting area for Horde in Dazman. Not Dazman, jeez, it's called
Zuldazar?
It's the swamp. I just literally forgot the name of the swamp.
Oh, Nazmir.
Nazmir, yeah. The starting area for the Horde in Nazmir, it's called Zul'Jan, and I mean, I just find it rather ironic that it's called Zul'Jan, and in the surrounding waters you have passive Saurids, as it seems to be the place where the Saurids live, basically, in regards to Zandalar in general. Well, that's where I can seem to find them. And what I find interesting is like you got a Zul, as in, you got Zul'Gurub, all the places around Azeroth. You just happen to have one in the middle of the heart of the Troll Empire, or the heart of Troll culture. It's called Zul'Jan, which could easily go to Jani, and just swords surrounding the area as well, which just, for me, indicates that that may have been his temple once upon a time, like long ago.
Yeah, absolutely, because I shouldn't have said it was a tablet. It's very interesting that, now that I remember correctly, is that his tablet, if you will, when you go to the ruins, is a scroll. So it could very well be that's a rubbing of the actual tablet of his story. Yeah, it's a scroll that's hanging up in the gorillas. Speaking of the, do we want to go to the second boss? Now that I've mentioned second bosses, even though Grong
Sure.
is the third boss for the Alliance.
Yeah, we'll go to Grong. Cool. And actually, if I was going to leave like a one thing about Jani that kind of, for me, hinted towards the idea that we're going to see him again sometime down the future, is the fact that he's called the Lower of Secrets. As in, it's just that thing of, well, how to put it, Lower of Kings, Lord of the Pack, all these titles. You can go one lower, the smallest one, the one that, is apparently the trickster. He's literally called the Lower of Secrets. I want to know what Jani knows, because that's just, some interesting lore there behind that title, or at least I hope there is. But yeah, second bosses, Grong, right? Or we'll go for the second boss of the Horde, Grong.
Yep. Big old monkey. Well, he's a great ape. Gorilla. But still.
So, what you find interesting about Grong?
Nothing really in the raid, but because I play Horde and Alliance, doing his sort of backstory upset me. It upset me greatly that he felt like he needed to do it and become a weapon against like Sylvanas. But at the same time, it kind of also felt like, even though he said that he came to the conclusion himself and that he wanted to do this and all that sort of stuff, I don't know. I sort of left that quest feeling like he was somewhat coerced.
Sorry to interrupt. I basically got the exact same feeling, as in it's one of those situations where it's like, okay, you volunteered to do this, but at the same time, if you weren't in the circumstances you were, if your people weren't in such danger, would you have actually been willing to give away basically your sentience for strength? And I guess, and from personality Grong kind of demonstrated, the answer's no. And if that's the case, then the gnomes really, really took advantage of him in a lot of ways.
Yeah, like I know his people were being killed by the goblins, and that they just like viewed that the goblins were like part of the Horde, and I guess that they are I can never say that stupid name. Anyway, I keep making it like a mash between Steamweedle and Bilgewater. But the Bilgewater goblins are killing him, and he's killing his people, and like just being just downright nasty little goblins, as goblins tend to be, as when prophets are involved. But like, I'm not 100% sure that those goblins were actually working for Sylvanas. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if they're actually working for Gallywix to try and get the Kajamite and stuff.
True.
Because where their lands were was on top of Kajamite, which is why the gorillas were sentient in the first place. And I mean, when you do the Horde quest, like right at the start, like the goblins do try and treaty with a gorilla, and say that you need to like come and like help us, something in regards to like either fighting or something to that effect. And the gorilla basically says, like we're not, I think her name's like Dahlia or Darkia or something like that. And she basically says that, we're not fighters, like, we're peace-loving people, and we don't want to. I don't want to have anything to do with that. And then the next time we see the monkeys or the gorillas, and one of them's been turned into a weapon of war. Like it just doesn't sit right with me. And all the way through like the testing and all that sort of stuff, doing that, I don't know. I kind of feel like maybe that they were lied to. The gorillas were lied to in order for them to like be on the Alliance's side. That's just my take on it.
I wouldn't say they were tricked per se. It's more like, well, for gnomes, it's like a alliance of convenience in regards to them, but it's kind of a alliance of necessity for the gorillas. And they bring up gnomes experimentation. I think this Grong situation in general sets a very dangerous precedent when it comes to the gnomes in general, because where I know everyone loves gnomes and I enjoy a good gnome tale myself, what's really disturbing about Grong is that they were quite willing to basically do what equivocates to human experimentation, or in the case of Grong, sentient experimentation, without much care, as in, okay, he volunteered, but at the same time there are reasons why in the real world human experimentation is banned no matter what, as in, even if they volunteer, you just don't do it. So I'm interested to see where that will go, or if anything will come of that, especially with Mechagon coming out in 8.2, and seeing if we'll see the more darker side to gnomish technology and culture in general.
Yeah, like, while they had all the contracts for like human for the experimentation on sentient being, what really stuck out for me, and when then the next time I went into the raid, I didn't feel quite happy. Or as happy knowing the backstory of this particular raid boss. It just felt really, really horrible to killing him, because I actually main a horde. It felt horrible to kill him. And then when I went in on my alliance, it felt horrible to see him like that. Like, I didn't win no matter which way I looked at him.
And I agree with that, as in, killing him outright, it's not a good experience, especially considering you know why he's doing everything he's doing. I think the broader context of his entire fight has interesting implications for the gnomes and where they can go with that.
Yeah, I had to clear my throat, which is why I had the pause. Sorry. But sorry. I think that what I was sort of like leaning at, or gleaning, what I was sort of like going with is that during the experimentation, the second round of experiments where things were going wrong, the gnomes didn't really come across as they really cared. They cared more about getting the weapon done than what was happening to Grong. Like, they're just like, oh, well, he knew the risks, whatever, man. Like, then they like slap chains and stuff on him, and yeah, I walked away from that not being very happy with the gnomes, like feeling like they were little monsters rather than like gnomes.
Happy little scientists.
Yeah, like I felt like what they had done to Grong was worse than what the goblins had done to his people. Like, I don't know,
Well, I mean, at the end of the day, he kind of got turned into a weapon. It's like and still had the same experience of basically dying. He lost his mind, just his body ended up being used as a weapon for the Alliance, and eventually the Horde as well.
Yeah. So, with that, do we want to move on? I can't talk much more about Grong. It just hurts. Man, it hurts. Do we want to move on to Jadefire Masters?
Okay. Jadefire Masters. What did you get from them? The Monk and the Pyro Mage.
I found them interesting. Especially the Dragon of the Light comment. Because
Dragon of the Light is a different text for the Horde and the Alliance one, because I know with the Alliance one, she mentions being the Dragon of Draenor, something along those lines.
Yeah, it is different. The Magha Orc is absolutely, yeah, you're right. She says that she is the Dragon of Draenor and gets all grumpy. But when the Draenei changes over, she's like, she'll yell out about being the Dragon of the Light. Normally I would give it my best Draenei impersonation, but my throat does not want to play today.
We'll get it around next time. We'll come up with some reason for you to put on Draenei voice.
So yeah, I did find that comment to be very interesting when I first walked into that fight, that she would mention that. I mean, she is Draenei, so she does have a connection to the light, even though she's a monk. But the way that she speaks, it would almost sound as if she was like part of the Lightforged army for some reason, because like she's like, oh, on my homeworld, I've killed many demons or something to that effect, and she like sass talks to you about being no better than imps. When you die, yeah, when you wipe, she's like, I've like beaten up imps, like, or I've like, you know, killed imps that were like harder than you, and it's like, oh, great.
At least the Magha says, you know, she's been up gore, and at least, you know, you feel like you achieved something, but imps, that's just cruel.
Yeah, she says something about imps anyway to sass talk you, and I was like, oh, fine. Thanks for that. With the Horde one, we have a Kultiran mage who turns into a phoenix, which to me didn't really make much sense. I would have thought he would have turned into like a tidal element or something like that, like something to do with water, not so much to do with fire. Makes more sense on the Alliance side with the Blood Elf mage, where he turns into a phoenix. But yeah, he talks about the phoenix has many forms, you know, like comes from ashes, like the stereotypical blah, 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 fire and phoenix, flames, rebirth, all that sort of stuff. Like he wasn't as interesting to me as the dragons.
Okay. Well, I mean, I didn't know that the Lightforge said that about the Jade Serpent, or like the form it took, because the Magha, well, for me, it made sense after doing a bit of research, as in, I think I was talking to Gizmo. Gizmo's part of the Discord, which you may want to join. But anyway, I was talking to Gizmo, and he mentions how during, oh yeah, Wards of Draenor, one of the champions you can get as the Horde is a Laughing Skull monk. And it seems as if the, well, Laughing Skull on Draenor seemed to be the, well, equivalent to Pandaren monks on Azeroth, except, you know, they kind of have different reasons for being monks in general. They kind of make sense considering being a monk is basically a form of shamanism, and we know the orcs are heavily into shamanism, so it kind of made sense there. But I find that connection rather interesting. The fact that Lightforged Draenei references being Dragon of the Light, that's odd in a lot of ways.
Yeah, Mestra, which is the NPC's name, also has a guild tag, or a title underneath her name, which says the Illuminated.
That's weird. I mean, if anything, I'd say that has something to do with being Lightforged and possibly being brainwashed in the Lightforging process, but at the same time, it's very interesting. I mean, at the same time, it would be interesting if there is another part to being a monk that actually does relate to the light, though. I mean, there's no indications so far in any of the abilities, but it could be there.
Yeah, so I did find that imp quote. She goes, I fought imps that proved more of a challenge. What a sassy lady. And yes, when in the middle of a fight, she'll say, you face a dragon of the light before she changes. So, She also yells out the elements will break you. So,
That said, though, I do find it interesting that the forms they take is something very very similar to the Jade Serpent, because, I mean, on the outset, there's no reason for why you'd think a Cloud Serpent would be on Draenor or even Argus at all, because neither planet seems to have Jade Serpents. However, turns out that the more you look into it, it turns out that, at least by old RPG standards, and possibly by the, I think it's like one NPC spawn or one NPC spawn area in like the Thousand Needles, turns out the Cloud Serpents are a cousin of Wind Serpents, which kind of makes sense because there are definitely Wind Serpents on Draenor, to say the very least. And if there are Wind Serpents, there are quite possibly Cloud Serpents as well.
Oh, I thought the hint was kind of in the name of the bosses being the Jade Fire Masters, that it was, she definitely does turn into a Jade Serpent. So that was just my sort of like Occam's razor, if you will.
I guess what I'm getting at though is like, there's no reason, or no, I don't think there's been a plausible reason for why the Jade Serpent or anything related to the Jade Serpent would turn up on Draenor at all. I mean, can you think of any reason why there'd be any references to the Jade Serpent on Draenor? Or something akin to the Jade Serpent on Draenor?
No, but it doesn't make... it doesn't mean that she didn't study under the Jade Serpent students in Pandaria. I mean, the Draenei have been around for a while now. They came in BC, so I definitely could believe that she would at least found her calling and being a monk somewhere in the time between BC and now. Like, there's a lot of time there that she could have had to become a monk.
Well, in regards to Lightforged Draenei, I can kind of see that happening, because you could have started inducting Draenei to become Lightforged after the Army of the Light just appeared. But with the Mag'har Orc specifically, I just can't see it, considering how recent their arrival has been. And it seems as if their form of, I don't want to call it monkism, but their form of being monks is kind of their own, or they developed it by themselves. So it just makes me wonder, well, if the Jade Serpent is like the relation that's made, if that's the relation made there, then how, or is the Jade Serpent somehow, I guess, a quote-unquote universal entity, as in is the Jade Serpent presence, or is the Jade Serpent present on more than just one world? Or does it have a presence, on other worlds?
I wouldn't know, because we haven't really seen those types of Cloud Serpents anywhere really else. And when I say those types of Cloud Serpents, I mean like the dragons in particular. But I mean, I wouldn't put it past the Mogu to flesh shape the Cloud Serpents out of Wind Serpents.
Sure. But yeah.
The Mogu did terraform or transform like a lot of things in Pandaria. So
True. And what is interesting is that a lot of the origins in regards to the Cloud Serpents, because I think there's like 3 contradicting origins when it comes to Cloud Serpents, but one of them does relate to the Veil of Eternal Blossoms and the Thunder King in some regard, so it could definitely be a thing. When it comes to the Mage, though, I didn't find the transformations, at least if the Cultiran Mage was a mage, that surprising, and with Blood Elf it wasn't surprising at all, but it just seems that the Phoenix innately relates to fire in regards to arcane, as it doesn't relate to elemental fire, but like specifically the fire school of magic when it comes to arcane magic.
Yeah, at this point I'm probably gonna have to agree on that, because like I always thought like Phoenixes had some form of like magic fire properties, and I would have put it down to like an elemental bond to fire that the Phoenixes came out. But since a Kultira mage was able to turn into a Phoenix, then maybe it's something a bit different. But I don't know, man. It just seems so strange that a Kulturian mage would turn into a phoenix. Like, the two bosses there are just really strange for the Horde, because the Draenei is a Windwalker monk that looks like a brewmaster that sounds like a Lightforged and talks about imps and dragons of the light. Like, she's just so strange, and she's called the Illuminated. And then you've got this Kulturian mage that turns into a phoenix that doesn't use any water magic at all, really. It's all flames and fire, and completely opposite to what you would think a Kulturian mage would be all about. And yeah, I just remember after that fight just feeling so confused as to what I had just witnessed. Yeah, so I mean, it made more sense for the Alliance side. It's like, oh, okay, like, you know, a Blood Elf mage turning into a Phoenix, like, you know, like you said, and like I said earlier, like, that doesn't raise any alarm bells whatsoever. When I saw that it was a Magha monk, I was like, oh, that's a bit weird for, like, sort of time traveling. If you took the expansions in order, that would be a bit strange, but I guess I could see it considering it's close to shamanism in terms of like chi and finding balance and all that sort of stuff. But yeah, the Horde side of things is so confusing.
Well, that was the thing, right? Because I find the more confusing things are the more interesting they are to look at, to pronounce my words. And I guess the thing I find is that if you have a Lightforged Knight that is a monk, and you have a Kulturian mage that is a phoenix, and it just seems to be second nature for them to be able to do these things, just makes me wonder if it's trying to, well, what Blizzard's doing is kind of just implying in subtle ways that there is more to these, well, magics or classes of magic than is kind of already being revealed. And it's kind of like the first very low-level hints at such a thing. I mean, like for the Kulturian mage, for example, when it comes to arcane magic, the interesting thing about arcane magic is, and something I'm kind of working on at the moment, is the idea that arcane magic isn't split between, I guess, fire and frost, or it's not technically fire and it's not technically frost magic, but instead it's heat and cold, as in like specifically the heat of the universe versus actual fire, as in fire doesn't innately have to be hot in World of Warcraft, and it's just basically the same for frost magic, as in it's not innately, water doesn't innately have to be cold, but it is cold, and frost magic is dealing with literal cold instead of water. If that made any sense whatsoever?
Yeah, it did. I'm still not quite sure what to make of it all in terms of how it all sort of sits with the magic of Azeroth. I'm not as well versed with that sort of stuff as I probably should be.
No problem. But yeah, it's just, as I said, I just find it's got some very interesting implications overall when it comes to those two bosses that generally be explored. Now, moving on, we have Opulence. However, before Opulence, because I know you have an opinion on what happens before Opulence, we get the lovely summoning of Bonsanti's, well, as it's been called so far, the Blood Moon, right? And what happens is that he summons a whole bunch of undead and you get to fight your way through them. What do you think of that?
Yeah, for the Alliance that happens. For the Horde, I mean, you run your gauntlet between Grong and the Jade Fire Masters, and it's Jaina just going pew pew pew, ice everywhere, and then it's a nice casual stroll into Opulence. But for the Alliance, it's the Death Gauntlet, with all the impaling spears and weird flying wind serpents everywhere, and Sorry? Okay.
I was just gonna say, this does technically happen before Grong, as in it happens just after the Jadefire Masters and the moon gets summoned in, but yeah, you get the idea, as you're saying, Death Gauntlet.
Yeah, the Death Gauntlet with the flying wind serpents, which look like avatars of Hakar back from Sunken Temple. You've got like the undead trolls, which also remind me of a Death Gauntlet you used to have to run into the old Sunken Temple full of zombie trolls and undead trolls. That wasn't fun. And this isn't fun either, I must admit. I don't particularly like going through the Death Gauntlet either.
All I can say is it's absolute hell as a range when you get impaled, and it's like, just click the spear, guys, and I'll be fine, but no one clicks the spear, just sitting there for the full duration, so it's like... Anyone? Anyone?
Yeah, that's one of the pet hates of mine too. I often play Elemental through... I play a Shaman, and I often play Elemental through the Gauntlet, which is terrible. But one of the interesting things that sort of happens is that Gen Greymane and Shaw are there. Shaw's already been into Opulence before with the cutscene and the war mission for the Alliance. He goes in, helps you swap the scepter out, and runs into Opulence there with you, so you sort of already know what's in there. But Gen says some pretty interesting things, like that, I said it to you earlier this week, Etch. I made mention of it.
You're referring to the Tides of Darkness reference, or the Tide of Darkness reference that you made.
Yes, I did think it was very strange that, well, I mean, unless Greymane is Captain Obvious at this point, it's like, oh, I feel the darkness, and you look up and you see all the skulls and, the flying the undead's wind serpents go, oh, yeah, again, I can see a darkness too. Good job, buddy. I do think it's a bit strange that Gen seems to be the only one who, makes mention of it. He goes, oh, be on your guard, champions. I feel a darkness. And then he goes on about saying that, or him and Shaw have a conversation about Sylvanas not being the only one who has, like, ghouls in her army. And then they get even more crankier and they say something like, the Zandalari, like, have picked their allies, like, based on that, or something to that effect. And they're like, we should just go and kill them all anyway. And then you run up the Death Gauntlet. But I did think it was interesting that Gen was the one who, like, mentions that to you.
Think he has more insight that he's letting on, or do you think that's him being set up for something greater in the future?
Well, it could be a couple of things. I mean, it could be that Gen's old, so he can feel, like, the sort of pull of death through Bonsumdi's magic. Like, the older you get, the closer you get to death. Poor Gen. Or it could be that because he's Worgen, he has, like, a wolf's, like, sense. And again, like, predators often know about, like, death and whatnot. And they have, like, what we dub, like, an extra sense when it comes to that sort of stuff.
True.
Like, they're more perceptive when it comes to that. So it could be one of those two things, or it could be that he's Captain Obvious and he's looked up and saw all the flying wind serpents and going, "Oh, there's a darkness here."
Well, I mean, just thinking about it, it's like, when it comes to Gen's character, he is the most, he is one of the most fleshed out Alliance characters there is. And he has taken center stage in quite a few instances in recent history, so it would be interesting to see where they plan to go with it if he isn't being Captain Obvious.
Yeah, I'm just going to say this now. I'll probably get hate for it, but I really do like Gen's character. I mean, he's done some really dumb stuff. And
Never!
Yeah, like, he's, like, sort of reign as King of Gilneas has been fraught with, like, dumb ideas and pride and all of that sort of stuff. So for him to be cautioning us as champions, like, I mean, I feel like we should actually, like, take some weight into those words because he himself is not a cautious person.
True enough.
So you make it through the gauntlet. Good job, guys. You unimpaled everyone, and you ran through the gauntlet, and you go down into the ancient, the pyramid. I did find it interesting that this particular vault has water running through it. It seems that lots of Titan vaults have water running through them. And that this particular one has gold, lots and lots of gold in it. One, because the Dazar'alor Empire is like ridiculously old, but two, I feel like the gold, this is going to sound strange, but in King's Rest, it talks about the gold, like purifying corruptive magics and all that sort of stuff. And I was just thinking that maybe the gold also acts as a bit of a filter for that water.
Definitely see that being the case. I mean, it fits the MO of Battle of Dazar'alor, King's Rest. I mean, even if we go to the place where all this lower, well, not all the lower stuff, but more like the more recent lower lore and the idea of being able to kill a lower comes from, Gundrak and the Drakari in general. What's the fortress called at the end? Oh no, it is called Gundrak. Yeah, Gundrak in general.
Yes, it's Gundrak. You've
got water running in there, and you literally see one of the lower pretty much have the exact same thing done to him as Razam. That's it, was the Rhino, from memory.
Akali!
Okay. Yeah, see Akali absolutely annihilated due to the Drakari trolls in the same manner, and Gundrak seems to share a lot of similarities to the, well, architecture of the pyramid, as well as King's Rest and Battle of Dazar'alor. What's interesting though is that it's like you can attribute that to trolls, but at the same time it's also a lot of Titan-ish aspects as well there, because we know that the trolls have repurposed type facilities, hence the seals within the pyramid in Dazar'alor. It's just an example.
Yeah, even in Zul'Gurub, we see a lot of water as well. Like they've got the water. Well, in the original one, you used to be able to fish a Hydra out of it.
Gotta love fishing.
So it does seem to be like a very troll thing to have water in it. The purified water area sort of also kind of reminded me of the Vale of Eternal Blossoms, with Immersis down in the bottom of it. Which brings me to like Opulence being a treasure elemental. The fact that Immersius is a water elemental stuck in the bottom of a Titan vault, and then you've got Opulence, which is a treasure elemental stuck in the bottom of a vault. I mean, Opulence being in a treasure vault makes more sense than Immersius, but like you sort of get where I'm going with that.
Well, thinking about it, now that you mentioned that, it would be interesting if Opulence was the equivalent of Immersius. It's just that through time or something Dazar'alor eventually did, they made it a gold elemental instead. As in, it's the same idea of purification in general, but it's a different form of purification. I mean, it would be more interesting if it was somehow a Titan construct in general, or Titan, or an element related to the Titans in general. I can definitely see where you go with that.
I was just thinking, what if Opulence, it was originally a water elemental, and then, as he was sort of like slooping his way around in the treasure vault, he picked up a bunch of gold, and it got stuck in him like a drain. He couldn't get rid of it all, so he just kept piling up in there.
Oh, that works. Yes. I mean, that would actually make a lot of sense in just regards to how Opulence actually works, because it's like, is it the gold that's actually forming him, or is there something else there that's just, full of gold? And it would be funny if, it was just water full of...
Well, he summons those spirit masks, the same as we see in Battle of Dazar'alor as well. So maybe they fell through the drainage system and they got sucked up as well, the spirits of gold. That priestess like sends out, and that they eat the corrupted blood.
Now you mention that though, Mercius does the exact same thing. As in the whole like boss mechanic with Mercius is the idea that you heal the good water and you kill the bad water. Actually, thinking about Mercius as well, you got the Shah were, or at least the Shah related to a Mercius in that regard, were water elementals technically.
Yeah, they were little globules of water that Mercius threw out, and then you had non-corrupted ones and you had corrupted ones. You'd kill the black ones, like the Shah corrupted ones, and you'd heal the blue blobbles, and then he had 2 bars that would work. And Opulence works relatively similar. Like he'll throw out spirits of gold, which then go along and eat the liquid gold that he's like put on you to hurt you. So it's very similar sort of mechanic to the priestess, except for it's not corrupted blood that the spirits are eating. It's gold, and then they hurt more. But yeah, it does have like similar hallmarks back to Mercius. So I wouldn't be surprised if he was like, you know, originally a water elemental that was fed a lot of gold.
You mentioning the gems in regards to Opulence. Do you notice anything interesting about them?
Well, their names are interesting. So you've got the Diamond of the Unshakable Protector, which is what the tanks pick up, and they get a shield, and you know, like as soon as their like little shield is broken, the diamond becomes like depleted diamond, and you know, then you have the Amethyst of the Shadow King, and I have always found that name very interesting. I don't know who the Shadow King was, but if you heal someone, they get shadow touched and dark knowledge appears. I don't know if you've noticed that at all.
Yep. I noticed it because in the first few weeks I actually ended up getting one-shot by the boss, and I was like, why did I get one-shot? Turns out I didn't have the shadow debuff, which, you know, that boss hurts a lot without it, to the very least.
Yeah, so it's interesting that Opulence throws out shadow magic. Because much like Mercius with his Shah Touch stuff, I've always found it interesting that Opulence threw out shadow magic. And that, so when you heal someone and it gets shadow touched, it turns into dark knowledge, and that increases mana regen, which, you know, again comes back into mana, water, arcane, that sort of stuff. So I've always found like there's the Amethyst of the Shadow King, not only because of the title and sort of, but it leans more towards like a void touched king, or a king that dealt with like darkness stuff. Like I know that these names could just be like fluff stuff, but I've always found this sort of stuff to be very interesting to see, like where it sort of like is meant to sort of like imply for just like even fluff stuff in the world, like can, you know, hint at things. And you've got the Tailwind Sapphire, which increases your damage done. Like stacks up to 5. And then, you know, you've got healing increasing done too.
May I just interrupt just to like get on the tail the amethyst stuff? Because now you mentioned that, makes me wonder, right, if gold doesn't, I guess, purify, but instead kind of seals away. As in, the idea is that instead of, well, purification, it's more like, well, it's kind of like galvanizing something, basically, as you coat it in gold to contain the darkness within. Hence why Opulence is shadow damage. As in, the gold's there, but inside the gold isn't actually that. Well, it's more related to the void, basically, as it's not as shiny as you'd think.
Blazes bright, masking shadows underneath, perhaps?
True enough. True enough, indeed.
So then you have the Ruby of the Focused Animus. And
Animus.
Yeah, like, go.
Oh, because I don't know what you're referencing there, and just for those who don't know, animus generally seems to be a reference to anima, which was first introduced, I think, in TOT, specifically with all the flesh shaping that Mogu did, and then all that blood is considered anima. What's very interesting is that the opposition to that is Vita, which we'll probably touch on later, but you got anima, right? And
yes, this is animus, though.
what's the difference? Or I must be ignorant. What is the difference?
Well, this ruby is taken by someone, and then it applies a stacking debuff on the boss to help you hit it harder. So it could be very much related to anima, as like flesh shaping, blood magic, that sort of stuff. I would imagine that if you got hit with that sort of stuff, its corruptive power would sap your own. Primordius and the fight there sort of leans towards like that, so you could be right.
Oh yeah, we do get the damage buff from Primordius, don't we?
Yeah, so you could be right there, and that could be like a sort of like a nice subtle like nod to that. It was another gem that I found interesting, because like it really does seem that the gems that you pick up that like absolute you need are very interesting in the way that the mechanics are dealt with.
Actually, yeah, think about it. You're right. As in, you need the ruby and you need the amethyst as well as the diamond.
Yeah,
so they're the only two you need, right?
Yeah, they are the only three that you absolutely need. So then we move on to the opal. So like this is just your general sort of everyone kind of gets that if they do damage.
Or if they do like what is it? Say AoE damage, isn't it? As in you get more damage the more targets you hit. The interesting thing I found about the opal was that it's unleashed rage, and just the mechanic itself seems to, at least for me, relate to the idea of chaos in general. As in, more targets you hit, the more in the fight you are, the more people you pick a fight with, the more power you end up getting. I just find it interesting that this seeming reference to chaos is in an opal, of all things.
Well, an opal is a multifaceted, multicolored gem, so...
Ah, okay, so it's like a reference to the idea of chaos magic, right? The idea that it's all magics in one.
Yeah, I would say so. Yeah.
Okay. Following that, we got the emerald and the earthen roots. Which
we have the topaz of brilliant sunlight. I like this one when I'm a DPS because it means I don't have to stand near anyone, and I get nice glowy feet, and I can do lots of damage.
It's actually more of a burst thing because it stacks, but then when it procs, you get the increase for the earthen roots to be perfect.
You transfer it to other people, so you stand away from everyone, and you get grossly incandescent. Once you get grossly incandescent, you're running close to people, and they get all a crit buff, and they grow larger, and they all get glowy feet, and it's brilliant. I like it because it's pretty. But it is one of the ones that people do grab. That I wouldn't say it's as needed as the other ones, but yeah, this one. It says, the power of the sun grants incandescence. Players standing nearby will cause you to lose incandescence. Once reaching 100 stacks, players become grossly incandescent. So you've got this idea that this light, the sun's rays of warmth are like shooting through you because of this gem. And, then you're redirecting that and going pew pew, and then you make everyone brilliant. So I've liked that idea.
That is a good idea. Though there was something I am interested about the topaz and just its reference to the sun is that, well, how do I put it? When it comes to Zandalari, just all throughout Zandalar in general, there's no reference to any type of, god of the sun, I guess. Which is just fun, interesting considering there is apparently the power of the sun, and if you consider the inspirations that Zandalar are based off of, I would have assumed there would have been some reference, at least somewhere, other than just in a topaz. But then again, I guess the other question I'd ask in regards to topaz is, do you think it relates to magnification? Or at least the light rays acts as a magnification in general.
Yes, I do think that that's what incandescent is meant to sort of show. That, you know, once you magnify to 100, like the power of the sun, you know, you can give crits to, like, you become like a shining beacon, if you will, because you get bigger and you like glow when you become like this torch in the darkness, if you will, so that everyone can come and run over next to you and, you know, stand there and like you get their crit buff. So yeah, I would say that that's a bit of a nod to that.
You really like your crit buff, don't you?
I do. I think it's a brilliant. I think it's a brilliant gem. I'm usually a healer, so I get Tailwind Sapphires. And then the next one is Emerald. I don't think I've ever seen anyone take an Emerald.
Oh, yeah, you haven't read it with me then. I take it all the time.
Yeah, it's like when you stand still. I mean, I'm constantly moving in that fight, and yeah.
You know, I'm DPS, I'm also playing on as a shaman, and yeah, I just sit on the back, and, well, all I can say is I get very, very, very annoyed when someone decides to drop the gold in melee.
So yeah, you're the first person I know that takes the emerald.
I must be bad.
Well, it gives you a damage increase. I mean, I take the brilliant one because I think it's pretty. But yeah, I never knew anyone took the emerald. But there you go. The emerald doesn't really have much to say. I mean, it kind of works like the roots of Shadrasil that the shamans used to have. You stand still. Except for theirs, you stood still, you heal. This one, you stand still and you get more damage. I don't know if you get like the roots effect around your feet like you used to do with the pants.
It's basically just, you don't, and from what I can tell, it's a very obvious reference, or it seems to be a very obvious reference to just nature, Emerald Dream, etc., in regards to Azeroth. So, do you want to move on to the next boss?
Sure.
Next boss is Conclave. What do you find interesting about Conclave?
Conclave, apart from wiping over and over and over on it due to the damn frog.
You know what's funny? It's like, you think the frog's the worst thing. No, frog's not the worst thing. Kimball. Somehow every group I've gotten has trouble with Kimball. It's like, why? The frog's harder.
There's lots of things interesting in the Conclave fight. I mean, the floor of the arena is
intriguing, to say the least.
Yeah, it's an astral body map. I can't think of the word for it, for what they're called, but a celestial map of like the moon, the blue child, Azeroth. So there's that. Then you've got Akunda and Kimball's aspects channeling blood magic in the sense of, or blood in the sense of Kimball's, and you've got Akunda's channeling lightning. So there's your Anima and Vita. You've got then Paku and Gonk. Paku and Gonk activate on pull. So I've never actually seen them channel anything. I'm sure they would, but I've never actually paid attention at the very, very start. I've seen Kimball and Akunda's though. So then you got Kragwa with the frog. We seem to be unlucky in the fact that we get the bird phase and then the frog just comes and goes bluck in the bird and people are like standing clumped up and then they get punted out and then they die due to the winds. So that seems to be a very annoying occurrence when I do it.
Is the space really that small? I mean, I've always found I find it actually rather roomy, to be honest, until that one person runs the frog into the place and it's like, could you not have standard, you know, maybe 5 centimeters to the right? Be great.
Yeah, I think it's more that once you're in the bird, you sort of just go, I've made it, I'm safe. And you don't really think about it from anything more. But yes, Paku. Paku's aspect adds speed buffs to everyone. Gift of the Winds. They're a pterodax. I keep calling them pterodax. It's a leftover from questing with certain people who called them pterodax. But yes, a pterodax. Lord of the Skies. Even though it sounds like a female. I'm not judging. But yeah, and then they're paired up with Gonk. We see the Paku-Gonk rivalry, if you will, throughout the Zuldazar sort of campaign for the Horde. They're the competing lower for the Horde player. You can either pick Paku or Gonk. I'm not sure why you pick Paku, but still, you can pick it if you want to fly around the place. It's just Gonk is way better.
I can't disagree with you there. I mean, just, yeah, you pick Gonk. No ifs, ands, or buts about it.
So yeah, there's that. Then, of course, you've got Kimball, which is the tiger from Vol'dun, and you've got Akunda, which is the lightning lizard from Vol'dun. Like, they're both from Vol'dun.
So, that you mentioned those two and just like general setup of Conclave, I do find interesting is that, you know, you have the rivalry of Paku and Gonk, and they happen to be the first two to engage, so that kind of just, you know, solidifies the idea of, okay, so they're always the first in to try and prove who's better. But when it comes to Kimball and Akunda, what is interesting about those two is that when it comes to Zandalari lower, they don't seem to be major players per se. As in, yeah, Paku and Gonk seem to be like they seem to be the most popular. But when you go to Kimball, right, he doesn't have any followers. They all pretty much disappeared in, you know, the quest line in there. And you got Akunda, who only takes in the exiles of Zandalari, who seems to have taken the exiles of Zandalari. It's just interesting that they both happen to be in the Conclave itself, as in, do they have as much influence as the other two, or not? I mean, assumedly they would.
Well, as the player goes through Zuldazar, you see that their worship statues appear. It's the same with Wansumdi and Kragwa. Like, they're from Nazmir. They're two. I should have mentioned these two. Wansumdi is only activated in Mythic. Kragwa is activated in Heroic. He's the frog that jumps in and kills you when you're in the bird. They don't actually have, though, or at least I don't Mythic raid or get that far anyway. But from what I've seen, that they don't actually have avatars like the lower council members. So I find that interesting that Kragwa and Wansumdi don't have, while they have the statues there, they don't actually have like a physical representation of their powers like manifest there, like Kimball, Paku, Gonk, and Akunda.
Well, now that you mention that, this is interesting because with Kragwa, it kind of, I mean, like, only slightly makes sense because you have that quest line in Nazmir where you help him out and you find out that a lot of his followers had just been outright killed. However, at the same time, it doesn't really explain the Kimball connection there, because Kimball had all his followers wiped out as well. But when it comes to Wansumdi, it makes me wonder about the Wansumdi we're actually interacting with, as in, is that actually the aspect of Wansumdi, as in he's kind of just possessing a body, and in reality Wansumdi is just a spirit in general. And so he's like the one aspect that's kind of active in the world instead, while the others are kind of stuck in the Conclave.
Perhaps. I mean, I thought that the reason why he didn't particularly have a representation in there is that he had just been recently elevated to prime lower status, if you will, with the death of Razan, so that he was in, like, so the king becomes his avatar.
So, good point. But in general, you think he replaced Razan? Or do you think he's ultimate? Okay. I was always under the impression that his ultimate may have always been there, to be honest. Which I know it's kind of odd, but it's like... How do I put it? What was... I think you mentioned it to me, actually. Shadows of the Horde. Well, somebody mentioned something about the Zandalari's culture in general and how it's kind of off in comparison to other troll cultures. Specifically the Darkspear, from memory. Do you remember that conversation?
Yes.
Do you want to talk about it?
Well, there's a lot to sort of talk about there. I mean, with Shadows of the Horde, one is talking to Vol'jin at that point, and he's basically trying to, like, long story short, he is trying to get Vol'jin to be more troll than the Zandalari, because the Zandalari have fallen into opulence and have forgotten their sort of true troll roots. And Vol'jin seems to be the only one that's not afflicted by this, or the Darkspears are the only ones that are not afflicted by this. Born also talks about how you don't actually necessarily have to be a troll to have a troll mentality.
Sorry, I'm ignorant. What does opulence actually mean?
Lavish surroundings.
It's kind of ironic considering, well, how I put it. You could quite possibly equivocate Razan and the following of Razan to that type of opulence, honestly, as in kind
yes.
of... Well, yeah, as in we've got Champions of the Light, but also just this idea that you, as like a show of what magic he uses, but it's the idea that overall you kind of end up being inundated and become kind of lax in your worship, or you get comfortable with the light in general instead of everything else that's around you, which might actually...
Yeah, so the Zandalari have definitely fallen into opulence. So like they're like, they live in a big gold city. It's very lavish. It's very grand. It's like they've got luxuries. They dress themselves in silks. They're more sort of taken with rank and position of power. We see the Zantuli Council sort of all jostling for like the ear of the king. I mean, the Horde player will hear NPCs ask them, it's like, I hear you have the ear of the throne, like as if they can't believe that this person would even be able to talk to the king. So it's like that sort of stuff, and whereas the Darkspears don't have that. There's a question Nazmi, just this is completely off topic, but this sums up the Darkspear versus the Zandalari sort of mindset. And I'll get back to like the lower in a second, because it explains something. So in Nazmir, you've got this blood priestess. She's strangling a Darkspear shadow hunter, and the shadow hunter's like, like, you know, like, when I get out of this, you know, I'm gonna like beat you up. Like, this, you think this is gonna hurt me? It's not gonna hurt me. And she doesn't have to strangle the Zandalari, because the Zandalari is cowering in fear and basically saying to the Darkspear Shadow Hunter, like, why do we even have to be in this swamp? Like, can't we just, like, you know, give in to what the blood trolls want? Like, this is kind of scary. And the Darkspear is like, no, like, what the hell, man? Like, you know, like,
this is wrong. Kind of goes,
yeah, like you got to fight. It's blood match. You got to fight. Like, you know, you've got to be strong. Like, keep fighting, sort of thing. And the Zandalari guys, like, just absolutely terrified of this. So so when you think of like the Zandalari worship to the lower, that is going to be reduced with like further with, like you said, like with the Zandalari than it is for like the Darkspear are going to be walking closer to the lower because they view their connection with the lower like to be like one of the highest things in their culture, whereas the Zandalari have gone away from that a lot. They've sort of gone, I won't say completely like the Night Elves with like Elune and whatnot, but they certainly don't value their lower as much as they probably should. And you can see that in Rusticon with Razan. He's like, oh, I haven't spoken to Razan in ages. Maybe I should like do that someday soon. Like he's not going to be committed to it. And then, Razan goes off and dies. And he's like, oh, I should have seen this coming. Oh, shouldn't have sat on my golden throne and thought, it's good to be the king. Like,
now that you mention it, though, I'm just thinking, the Darkspear don't have prophets, do they?
Not that I'm aware of, no.
That's an interesting thing, because you mentioned, like, the Night Elves, right? And they have their priestesses who commune with the Lune, right? As in they kind of push that duty aside to a certain group. And what's interesting is that where it is an exclusive group, the Zandalari still do the same thing, as in they either pass off to the king or the prophets of Lower to commune with them, instead of trying to like do it themselves.
Yes. Shadow of the Horde's actually, Shadow of the Horde, Vol'jin's Shadow of the Horde, makes mention of this. Here it basically said that the Zandalari were a priest caste, and that they specifically made the Shadow Hunter profession to be more myth than legend, and like be more myth and legend than an actual like something that you should strive to be. And in the book it says that they did this because they wanted to be more powerful and have more sway over troll society. And if they hadn't have done it or hadn't have had that influence on it, then there'd be more shadow hunters. That like trolls wouldn't have lost their way. But because the Zandalari got into power and sort of made it so that the shadow hunters were not as well thought of, and that the priests are all that they needed to do to talk to the lower, then sort of society started to stagnate, and the lower were not being worshipped as they probably should have been. So yes, it is reflected in this.
Question, have you got something going on in the background?
I just had to chase a bug off my desk. I'm very sorry.
Don't worry, I have a morbid hatred for flies, to say the very least. Cannot stand them.
It was a spider.
I'm actually surprisingly okay with spiders and the bug crusher in the house. I'm not afraid of them. Flies though, I don't go rabid, but I just don't like them whatsoever.
So yeah, in the lower and the conclave fight, we see that. We see sorry, I'm still trying to like get the bug. We see Gonk, Paku, Kimball, and Akunda. Yeah, they're answering the prayer of or the commands or the cries of their followers, but yeah, I don't know, like they don't seem as scary as like I would have thought Loa would have been.
Well, I guess the thing is, it's like, well, okay, if we consider Bonsamdi's power as just like an example, right? The way he's described, he apparently could have just one-shotted the entire raid when we go to Rastakhan, right? But he doesn't, for obvious reasons. He doesn't seem to want to exert his power. And the others seem to show some type of restraint as well, because they are extremely powerful creatures. So it just makes me wonder if exerting their power uses up, I guess, the quote-unquote worship of their own followers. And because things have been waning, or because they're afraid of something else, they don't use up all that power.
Yeah, I could see that. I could see it being a bit like a battery. Like you take stuff out and then you put stuff back in.
But yeah, I just like the initial statement, yeah. I generally was just under the impression that Bwonsamdi may have been one of the original lowers that were worshipped, and, well, as you kind of pointed out, kind of gets replaced by Razan eventually. But then again, it could have been vice versa as well. This was that could have been there, and then they just put in.
Well, no, I think you're right in saying that, because Bwonsamdi does make mention that when Rustichan goes to give him his empire, Bwonsamdi and make him his like prime lower for his family. Bwonsamdi does say, "Oh, you know, like you're gonna have to give me something better than that." Because I know what you're going to do. You're going to like take my power now when you need it, and then you're going to go back to worshipping one of those life flowers like when you get the chance. No, I want something more.
Well, what is interesting is there is a reference to that in Asmir, because the what is it? Oh jeez, forget what the achievement's called, but basically there are a bunch of tablets in Asmir, for those who don't know, and basically on these tablets you're going to get a history of Asmir in general. One of these tablets references Bwonsamdi, and it basically says that under a royal decree, it's like the only tablet that has something like this, it says under a royal decree that Bwonsamdi will now become the lower of, or the official lower of like death, basically, and all souls will go to him. It's just off the massive necropolis, well, not necropolis, but massive way to the necropolis, the Terrace of Sorrow, from memory. That's what it's called.
Yeah, the place with all the dead or undead skeletons running around in.
Looking at the time, it looks like we've been at this for about hour and a half, hour and 20. So this is probably part 1 to Battle of Dazar'alor, because we do have other things we'd like to talk about. We haven't even reached Rustichan, and we may have missed out on a few things we might want to mention another week. So yeah, hope you enjoyed. What, do you have any other final words?
Well, so far I've liked the raid of Dazar'alor. There's a few other things. I can't wait to talk about Mecha Talk and Rustichan, and I'm kind of dreading giving my thoughts on Jaina, given my history.
Oh, I mean, you can't be the only one with that opinion of Jaina. I don't think.
I feel very alone in my critiques of Jaina's character. So yeah, that'll be interesting come time to do that. But so far I've had fun.
Yeah, no, I have definitely enjoyed the raid. I haven't been as raid as much as I should, but I have enjoyed it. But thank you for listening, and until next time, have a nice day.